Hello, and welcome to Bad Lit Friends, a writing podcast that barely knows what it's doing. I am Meagan Thompson Mann, and this is my co host.
Hi, I'm Kirk Rafferty.
This is episode 2 of our Misbegotten podcast. Thank you if you had the misfortune of listening to the first one and indulging us in this moment of madness.
We have plural numbers of podcasts now. Episode 2, we've got 2 of them.
And we have listeners in double digits.
We do. I think we're up to 17, which is fantastic, right?
Hell yeah.
It's like, well, let's see, there's 3 of us. That's 14 more than I thought we would have.
And there's somebody in Russia. Whoever you are in Russia, we love you.
According to the Spotify stats, Russia makes up 10% of our listener base. I don't know how that happened, but that's crazy. So
It has to be your books.
it could be. Yeah, the Kremlin could be coming after me.
Yeah. Which I say books plural because that's actually the topic of this week's podcast, which is book 2, Writing in Purgatory. Kirk and I worked on our second novels. I am halfway through now, officially, my book 2, and Kirk has just finished his draft of his second novel and sent it to his agent. We're both in this in between stage that we wanted to talk a little bit about, and this strange space of what are we doing when our first books aren't even out in the world yet? Why are we writing more? I am not a parent, so I don't know what it's like to put multiple creations out into the world and not love one more than the other. Right now, I feel like I've been neglecting book 1 simply because I'm so excited about book 2. How are you finding this transition?
It's really strange. I've been writing most of my life. I have so many incomplete novels, all the way from, I thought I was going to be a fantasy writer when I was in high school. I have so many first 2 or 3 chapters of books that nobody will ever read. So the one that I did finish that is currently on sub, when it was polished enough that I felt like I could start querying for an agent, I felt drained after that. I felt like that was the only book I was ever going to complete. So certainly we all feel like the book is our baby. This really felt like this was just the one and only book. And I understood logically that I need to write more books, and I understood logically that I will write more books. But at the time, it just seemed inconceivable. Like I had put everything into that one book. I had 3, 4 different false starts where I was like, okay, this is my next novel. And man, I was like gung ho. I was writing that novel. And for whatever reasons, it just wasn't coming through. And that was actually kind of worrying me because it sort of felt like, wow, maybe that was it for me, right? Maybe I am a one book wonder. And I finally found the right story that I wanted to tell. So I've actually completed it to the point that, yeah, I handed it in to my agent. She is currently reading it. I am on the edge of my seat wondering if she's going to love it, if she's going to hate it, somewhere in between. I don't know. So I feel like it is the best book I've ever written, though. I love my first book. I think this book really stretched me. I feel like it's the best book I've ever written. And I am once again wondering, do I have it in me now for that third book? I actually wrote the first 1,100 words of what I think is going to be my next book today.
That is so cool, by the way. I just want to say
We'll
that
see.
is real. It's yeah, well, we'll see, of course. But what is the title of book 2, if you don't mind sharing?
Book 2 is The Snow Maiden. I am very attached to this name, by the way. I really hope a publisher does not insist that I change this. It's actually a good problem to have, though, right?
Yeah, that's a quality
But
problem.
yeah, so it's The Snow Maiden. It's a historical espionage novel. It takes place in 1950 in Moscow. It's about a CIA agent who has to extract a ballerina to the West.
Is there any crossover between books 1 and 2?
Yeah. In my first book, I have a pretty minor character. She comes into play kind of in the last third of the book. So she's not super minor, but she's a secondary character, but she's also just a little bit insane. So when I was kind of fumbling around trying to figure out like how my next novel was going to work out, I did kind of stumble on she's got a backstory. I had a whole incredible backstory for her. And I was like, you know what? Let's go back in time. So My first book takes place 1961. My second book takes place in 1950. So this is 11 years earlier in that character's life. So the books are connected. This is not it's not even really a prequel. It's just I'm borrowing a character and playing what if.
It's very funny because somehow independently of each other, I did exactly the same thing as
Isn't
you.
that crazy?
My first book that I am querying, This Ends Now, is set in New England, 2022. And there is a very minor character who plays kind of a big role in the last third of the book, where she is the wife of the villain, let's call him. We only see her through the main character's viewpoint, and she has a definite view of this person, of this wife, and she sees her as this pretty but lightweight character. And she can't understand how she married this terrible man, and none of it makes any sense to her. And I, for whatever reason, could not stop thinking about who is this person who chose to get married to this terrible person.
So you're going to make it make sense.
I decided to make it make sense. The main character in book two is this wife, Jenny, and she is not lightweight. She is a heavyweight. In book one, she is closing that part off of herself. She compartmentalizes because this is how she deals with her trauma.
And just for listeners, what's the genre?
Book two is upmarket, it's kind of treading into literary fiction. It is highly pretentious at times. I am obsessed with this main character because she is nothing like who I thought she was in book one. I had no clue. But then when I sat down to start writing with her, because she would not stop bothering me.
Yeah.
So, like, why don't you tell me who you are? The main character in book one, Lainey, thought that Jenny was this beautiful, lightweight faculty wife. It turns out she's a first generation college student from rural Iowa who is a brilliant literature student. After she graduates from Vassar, goes to Columbia to pursue a PhD. This is not this, I'm just real cute and real pretty, which is who I thought she was in book one, because that's who Lainey told me she was.
Mhm.
But I'm obsessed with this character now because she's very weird.
After you finished book one, then, did you flounder like I did?
No, I immediately started writing.
Yeah.
And a lot of that goes back, I think, to being in a writing circle. I use the writing circle as an opportunity to just keep writing. I've certainly produced pieces for the circle that are standalones that aren't part of this universe at all. But
Mhm.
I find that when I'm writing, I just want to write about these people. I have a few short pieces that I have been submitting as short fiction to magazines and contests here and there. And I'm not a short fiction writer, but I'm trying. But I rolled right into book two pretty much. But like you, I also have some other aborted starts. I had been a huge consumer of Regency romance novels, like any wise woman out there. I'm sorry. They're just great. I can't help myself. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And I thought, you know what? I can do this. Well, guess what? I can't do this. I started writing this book and I realized I was writing historical fiction. And I was like, I can't write this because I barely have the patience to research 2008. I can't do what you do.
Oh, well, story time. When I finished book one of the floundering things I was doing, so querying was going terrible for me. I was not getting like the feedback I wanted. I just kind of felt like this book was not going to be picked up by an agent. And so I started writing this historical fantasy. I've since learned I'm either just not cut out to write fantasy or I'm just not a good fantasy writer yet. I actually still love this book. It's about half finished ish. I love the characters. Someday I think I might finish it, but I'm just not where I need to be for that book yet. So anyway, I got on the call with my agent and we're talking. And then, she asks, of course, and you should be prepared for this question because every agent will ask this. So what are you working on right now? And I think that she had already made the offer at that point. So I told her, well, I'm working on this historical fantasy and I'm explaining the plot and everything like that. She says, yeah, I don't want that book. And I make it sound mean, but she just doesn't rep fantasy. So we talked about like other irons that I had in the fire, and she kind of liked those other ideas, none of which I have actually completed. We did meet up in April. We both were actually at the same conference. And so I was talking to her and I said, listen, I've got 20,000 words into the Snow Maiden novel. Tell me what you think. And she's like, yeah, I love that idea. Can you make it dark? And I was like, Oh,
It's catnip for Kirk.
yeah, it's absolutely catnip, and so this book is so dark. I'm sort of worried now that she might drop me just because she's like, "What the hell
Traumatized.
is going on in that brain?"
I don't write dark stuff. I mean, I write stuff about trauma and healing, but I don't deal so much with what caused the trauma. But now I'm about to write some shit that caused the trauma. Kirk has seen it and liked this idea. It's messed up. It's also highly aesthetic. You were talking about when your agent asked you what else you had. And one of the things that made me think about was when I started writing book two, I realized that this is actually a good thing that I'm still working in this universe because I'm being consistent in genre. So when I get an agent, they know already what I work in, you know, how I express myself,
Yeah.
not trying to go too broad. That if I can write in this slice, this is a lane that I'm happy to stick in. If that means, you know, writing to market expectations, I'm cool with that.
Well, if you're an indie author, anything goes. Whatever you need to do to build your audience. If you want to write sci-fi for your first novel and then Elizabethan poetry, whatever you want to do, if that's working, that's working. But if you're going to go the trad pub route, you just have to write to market. And that's a hard thing for a lot of authors to understand. But your agent doesn't want good writing, they want marketable writing.
Yes, and that's something as well that I realized in writing book 2 is the expectations of the market, and that while book 1 was my baby, I may have felt too close at times, and I realized that I could have had greater diversity in my cast. Part of the problem was that it set in northern Vermont and Connecticut. I grew up in Connecticut, and we used to say more white people than trees. So that's a problem, even though I'm a woman of color, I'm half Latina. I grew up around white people. I grew up in a white family. I went to prep school. I went to an Ivy League university. These are my experiences. And I realized, like, okay, that's great. But I also have a whole other variety of experiences. I've been around people from every walk of life. I lived in London for a dozen years, much more cosmopolitan city than Los Angeles is. I'm sorry, LA, I love you, but no. I decided, yes, I want to bring this in because it's not just a cynical ploy of publishers want more diverse books, but it's just reality. And it's also my reality. So
Yeah.
I've taken on comments about be more diverse and also, frankly, younger people. My first book is about a woman in her 40s. That's great. There's plenty of us, but well, I'm not in my 40s. I like to pretend that I am.
You'll get to your 40s someday.
One of these days I'll
You
get
got to
to my
finish up
40s.
your 30s first.
That's right. That's right. But why not write about sexy people in their 20s doing fun shit? Why not? Okay, sure, I can do that. Because people want to think about sexy young people having sexy times. They don't like thinking about people in their 40s being saggy, having sexy times. Frankly, I don't either, but I wrote about it. So the market did have some role to play when I was thinking about book two and kind of mapping it out. I talked about in episode one about becoming a plantser and coming up with an outline. And it was something that I definitely thought about. As I've dwelt in this area for longer and longer, I feel more and more confident in this area. When book three comes around, it's not going to feel like something that I have to tackle because it's just the landscape that I write in now.
Yeah. And by the way, before I get angry comments from the other 14 listeners we have, I want to make a distinction because I think that I suggested writing to market earlier. What you don't want to do is like write to market trends.
Correct.
If you're going to write to market trends, you're likely to have a bad time. But what I mean by writing to market is that you need to write a marketable book. Whatever genre you're writing in, you need to follow the genre rules. You have to have a happy ever after if you're writing romance,
Or happily for now.
or happily for now. That's the law. Nobody's going to take your book if one of the lovers dies at the end.
No, if you've done that, you've written romantic fiction. And that's okay. There is definitely a market for
But then
that.
there's different rules.
And it's something that I've been kind of conscious of doing in both book one and book two, where I could see people getting confused that this is a romance. Book two is not a romance, it's a tragedy. learning how to bump up the tragic elements, doing dramatic foreshadowing in a book so that readers don't decide that this incredibly toxic person is somehow a hero or, some sort of romantic lead who's going to sweep you away terrifies me. And that's part of conforming to genre, because once you start treading outside of the rules of your genre, people get confused. And when readers get confused, they get frustrated, they get angry, they're on Goodreads, they're telling you suck.
That would be a great problem to have.
God, that Kirk Rafferty, he's such trash. You do not want these problems. I think that's what I was trying to say as well, is that conforming to your genre expectations, also understanding what people want to buy. They want to see people who are like them in books. So
For
put people
sure.
who are like them in books.
So what were we talking about?
I don't know. I thought we could also talk a little bit about what it's like to be in two processes at the same time,
Mhm.
querying and editing, or being out on sub and writing, any combination of these things. How have you been managing?
I mean, obviously, both of our situations are a little bit different right now, but I have no control of being on sub at this point. I did actually mention some editors that I thought were a good fit, but really, it is my agent's job to reach out, use her network, and put that book on submission. So, with regards to the first book, I don't have a lot to do right now. There was a time when I was querying where I'd send out a batch of queries and I might get something back that said, like, oh, I just wasn't hooked by your first chapter, or something like, I love the writing, but I wasn't hooked by your first chapter. I got that a lot.
I got that today.
And so, you go back and you start like reworking your first chapter, right? Like, oh, how can I make that? And all you've got to go by is, I wasn't hooked by your first chapter. Yeah, you have nothing else to go by. And so you have to like read the tea leaves, right? And so you're constantly kind of mucking about. There was a time while I was querying, and it may have been a detriment to further books that I was
Mm.
working on, because I was just obsessing over what could this possibly mean and how can I make that better. Right now, my first book, for all intents and purposes, it's sitting there. I don't have to do anything to it. And so I can focus completely on mine. You're in a little bit different situation though.
Yeah, I have been querying my first book now since I think February. That sounds about right. And I've had 3 or 4 full requests so far.
Fantastic.
And I've had more personalized feedback than I think is probably average, which is also fantastic. I've been
Mhm.
getting a lot of, I love your writing. I would love to see everything but what you just gave me.
Yeah.
Staying positive is hard sometimes. And at the same time, while I'm putting it out into the world, I am working on book 2, which I am super psyched and super stoked to work on all the time. But there's also all the work of querying and making query packages, and everybody wants something a little bit different. Some people want 10 pages, some people want the first chapter, some people want 50 pages, some people want 30 pages, some people want the whole book. Ticking all the boxes on a query manager can be hard. It feels like business, and it doesn't feel fun, and it doesn't feel creative. Even when you're, tweaking your query letters, it doesn't feel creative at all. You're like, why? I thought I was a writer. What am I doing right now? If you're going to go TradPub, this is what you have to do. It's just one of those things, head down, get it done.
Yeah.
As I've been going through querying, I have been getting some feedback on these personalized rejections. It's not you, it's your book. I have teased out a few threads, which is, your writing is fantastic. We love your voice. There's something wrong with your first chapter. And also, there's something wrong with one character in particular, which hurts because that character is partially based on someone who I care about very
Oh.
much. And he's perfect just the way he is.
Objectively, though, that
Yeah,
is fantastic feedback, right?
it is.
It doesn't usually get that low level. That's painful. It may even be wrong, right? You may actually go back and look through and say, no, this agent is wrong about that.
Yeah.
But in any case, like, I don't know, it's great feedback.
I bounced some of my ideas about changing book 1 off of my betas, and they've given me their feedback on these changes, some of which they think are reasonable, and others are, oh my God, do not do that. That is not right. These are people who have read the entire book, loved the book, and given me detailed feedback. So I trust them more. While I am going to be making some changes, I'm going to be taking some time away from book two to fix what I think are, I don't want to call them problems, but
Mhm.
they're problems. Some of them are quick fixes, some of them are a little more in depth. One thing that I think I can do is increase the page time for the villain because he really is fucking awful. And I enjoy writing him very, very much. I won't regret that bit. But at the same time, I'm like, but what about book two? I've gotten to
Yeah.
the midpoint, and I have taken all of the advice about do not have a soggy middle by having a apex here right in the middle. Something really messed up is happening right in the middle of this book. How do I walk away from this? Because it's just about to get extremely bad. I will, though, because I am a
Yeah.
dedicated artiste.
That could be a whole episode talking about having to walk away from one project to work on another at the absolute worst time, right?
Yeah. I want to keep the momentum, but the reality is that I do want to sell book one. I have to remind myself of this all the time. Like, you wrote a book and you want to sell it, so do the thing that can make you sell the book.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you gotta sell book 1 before you sell book
Yeah.
2, right?
I may very well end up selling book two before book one, and that's okay too.
One thing that I didn't talk about on my book 1 that is on sub right now, is that it has been on sub for a while. So, we never like to think it, but you have to be prepared for even after you land an agent, your book could die on sub. I don't think that should be the main reason for book 2, but, certainly that's a driver. The fact is that my first book may not be my first book either. My book 2 could wind up being my book 1, but that's just how it goes.
One of the comments that you made to me a couple of weeks back is about how confident you feel in your writing right now. In book two, I'm doing all sorts of things that I wasn't able to do in book one because I don't think I had the craft down yet, notwithstanding my 500,000 words that are floating out on the internet. I still needed some more work and to write an entire novel. And this is a topic for another time, but I can teach lessons on how I cut 60,000 words out of my manuscript, and you can too.
Yes, yes. I can talk about how I had a mostly finished novel that
Yes.
I then decided to break into 2 novels, neither of which are finished at this point.
They're very good too.
One day I will finish those novels.
They're so unlike what you've been doing in books 1 and book 2.
They're very different, yeah, which is why I did set them aside. When you are looking to be a debut author, before you start jumping around in different genres, different styles, things like that, you've got to establish yourself. That's a disadvantage that TradPub has. Whereas if you're an indie writer, you can do whatever you want to do. And it's either going to succeed or it's going to fail, and it's all on your shoulders. But if you're going to work with a publisher, they buy your book because you wrote a historical fiction. Your book too better be a historical fiction as well.
The divide between the sensitive artiste and the artisan, embracing the artisan inside, the person who is able to create the work that can be sold for people who want other people to read their books, that want to have mainstream publishing. They have to embrace the artisan and not think, oh, I'm a hack just because I'm thinking about the commercial elements of selling books. I am actually a former bookseller in a very long time ago life. I sold used and rare books. My mother, who eventually one day I will tell about this podcast, is still a rare bookseller. You need to think about your book being a physical object in someone's hands. And how does it become a physical object in someone's hand? It has to be sold if it's not being stolen or borrowed. But for the most part, it's being sold. For better or worse, we live in a capitalist society. We need to think about what can we sell. If we're selling book one, and book one, as you say, is historical fiction, book two is going to have to be historical fiction too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Kirk is great at writing historical fiction, but I have no idea if he can write, romantasy. I don't know. That's my hot take. I'm sure that a lot of
Sure,
people
sure.
will really disagree with me and call me a corporate sellout, but that's okay.
One of these days I am gonna write a romantasy. Put a pin in that, because
I
there's
will.
One day it's going to be out
I
there.
will. And one of the things about being in the sort of blue sky community of writers is seeing how many different kinds of people are writing romance right now.
Hmm.
There are a lot of men who are writing romance that I have discovered on Blue Sky.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very interesting to me. And there is the Whip Snips daily sharing threads that you and I both take part in sometimes. This is how I get to see what these men are writing. I'm like, God damn, that's hot.
Yeah.
It's a very different way of looking at it. And they aren't necessarily writing from a male point of view. Sometimes they're writing women or non binary people. And I find that really interesting, especially when they get it right. Being that outside of what is a traditional channel of where people think we are supposed to be writing and people who can do it well is so exciting to come
Yeah.
across.
It's one of the things that haunts me in both of my books. My lead character are both women, and I'm terrified that it's going to wind up on one of those men
Men writing
writing
women.
women badly lists. Like, just terrified.
So everything I've read so far, I've not had that vibe. We can get back on topic. Do you think that your writing process has changed at all between books one and book two and now book three?
Book three may actually sit at 1,100 words for the next 3 weeks. I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome.
But I have been working on an outline. Book one took me a very long time to write, and there were periods where I set it aside. I did not even want to look at it anymore. There were periods where I thought I was not going to finish it. I had a very unfocused process. To this day, I'm not sure how I finished that book. Other than at some point, everything started feeling like it was building momentum, that I was starting to invest myself more in it. I think the last third of that novel I wrote mostly nonstop and 500 or 600 words a day, or maybe less sometimes. Book two, however, once I finally figured out that this was the book I wanted to write, 1 month I'm writing this book, and it was like the next month, it's done.
It was terrifying. It gave me an inferiority complex.
I had an 11,000 word day one time. That's like the record.
You kept checking in with me and telling me like these numbers, and they were going up, 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 and
Yeah.
I'm cheering you along. I could never do that.
Now they were shit words, right? They were shit
So
words.
what?
But I was just kind of vomiting onto the page. I knocked this book out in under a year, definitely. I'll have to figure out when I first started it, but just cranked away at it. So we're recording this on August 8th. I wanted to get it into my agent's hands before August 1st, and I think I got it into her hands August 2nd. I had this manuscript that was kind of a first draft, and I had like, what, maybe 6 weeks before August 1st.
Yeah.
I was not getting sleep. I was staying up till all hours in the morning editing this thing. And then once I'd finish an edit, I'd go back to the beginning and I'd start editing again. I mean, I don't think I slept much for a month, maybe 2 months. The whole timeline is blurry to me. So, yes, my writing process changed definitely between the books. Now, I don't know that that's sustainable, and I expect that I will probably find more of a groove that is sustainable. You don't have to write every day, but you should make progress.
Yeah. For me, I went straight into book two, but there's definitely a change in process. For me, starting out, I decided to write all the way through, start with chapter one and end with the final chapter, whatever that is. Have an outline. Know kind of what everybody's supposed to be doing. Book one, it was writing chapters totally out of sequence, not always writing the book, writing short pieces in addition because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know I was writing a novel. That's how I ended up with 144,000 words. Do not do this. Don't do this to yourself. Now I have an idea of what I'm doing, where I'm going, and as a result, I am being more productive with less time because I know how to crank the words out now. I am not somebody who can do a vomit draft. I am a tinkerer, and it has to look at least partially nice before I can say, okay, lid on that one, next chapter. I am perhaps a little tough on myself, and that is one thing that I think I have carried over from book one. But when Kirk has his 11,000 word day, I know that that will never happen to me. But I have had a 4,500 word day.
That's a damn good day.
It was unbelievable. I had the devil inside me. I just sat down at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and basically wrote until 10 o'clock at night. And at the end of the day, I had over a chapter in a day. And I write long chapters. Sorry. So it was amazing. And I also know that I can't expect that from myself every time.
Mhm.
The one thing that is carried over from one book into the other is understanding my limits and what I can do, but that's about it. I have seriously changed how I write and how I approach writing from one book to the other.
That's great. Yeah.
So, we're going to dip back into our Book World Drama Watch segment. The use of AI in creative writing, but also the concept of the AI Witchfinder General movement that
Yeah.
has been out there right now. And Kirk and I talk a lot about the uses of AI in creative writing. Fear ye not, we are on the side of the angels and do not use it ourselves. But at the same time, there is a strain of Puritanism that says if this writing is awkward or stilted or uses M dashes or the rule of
Yeah.
threes or a lot of Oxford commas. Therefore, it must be AI. Sometimes writing just sucks, and that's it.
Or sometimes it's just a particular cadence that a writer has. Like I've seen people pick out writing, post it on threads or whatever, and say, this is obviously AI written. And I'm looking at it going, I mean, it's a little different or something like that, but it's not necessarily bad writing. Now, I've also seen necessarily bad writing that is also called out as AI. But here's where I think we're leading. Unless somebody has actually included a prompt in their writing or somebody captured a screenshot of them, their thing in ChatGPT, there's just no good way to determine if somebody actually used AI. There are some overtly obvious things. And even the overtly obvious things, I don't know, you kind of have to give the benefit of the doubt. The AI witch hunting, where somebody's just like pulling a paragraph out of a book and saying, look how many M dashes there are, or look at these AI phrases.
The M dash stuff really hurts my soul as someone who has been
Me
using M
too.
dash since I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a tick of mine, but that's my jam. I'm not going to be shamed out of doing it because other people say, well, that's an obvious tell. Well, that's great. What is AI? What are these LLMs? They are trained on writers, they are trained on
Yeah.
people like us. So, of course, they're going to write like us. That's not a particularly hot take. That's kind of just reality.
And there are some phrases that AI tends to overuse, and it's just the way that these models are written. There's a specific weight put to the next word that it's going to generate, right? And so this is why you get these AI isms.
One that I have seen is in romance where it's a lot of men with the hands on the small of the woman's back. That's something that keeps coming up
Yeah.
again and again, and I've used that in my own writing, and I went, "Oh, no, actually, I think that there's a way that I can express this that doesn't sound AI," because there are more interesting ways to talk about this. Because when I see it in the context of an obviously AI generated bit of text, it does feel flat. So, it's an opportunity for me to make my own writing more my own
Mhm.
by looking at these tells. And if one good thing comes out of AI witch finding, it's that we're learning what's flat in our own writing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking before about how poisonous it can be for these accusations to be thrown around.
Yeah. And it can ruin a writer.
It can absolutely ruin a writer before their career even starts.
Yeah, it can ruin a writer by taking away their motivation. I don't know if this has happened, but I wonder if at some point an AI is going to be so bad on a writer that maybe a publishing contract is pulled, something like that. And that's heartbreaking because it's just not something that you can prove. Here's another thing I read recently. People are starting to talk more like AI because in office environments and things like people are composing emails using AI. And so people are actually starting to use some of the cadences that you hear in AI writing, but they're using that in everyday speech. So people are starting to speak AI, I guess. And I have to wonder, like, maybe that is flowing over into people's writing. And so you may see this very obvious AI tell, but no, in fact, it was just someone who's now speaking AI because that's what they're surrounded by.
The robots really are trying to kill us, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. They really are. In my day job, there is nothing I hate more than getting an email and I know it was written by I just know I'm not going to challenge them on it or anything like that. I just hate it. I'm like you're a professional. Have some communication skills of your own.
we were talking about the use of AI in legal writing. I'm a litigator. I write professionally every single day, and I don't use AI in writing my own briefs because I'm terrified of the horror stories that I hear about lawyers getting sanctioned because they are putting fake sites in their briefs. And there have been two judges who have had their rulings rescinded
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was found out that they had fake citations in their rulings. And this is terrifying because this isn't just our books that we want people to read and enjoy. This is life or death sometimes,
Yeah.
or property rights. This is difficult stuff. It's all fun and games until somebody goes to the slammer, right?
Well, and that's a hallucination, right?
Yeah, those are all hallucinations.
Now that we're very clear on, hey, don't be an AI witch hunter because you can't get it right. It's not a binary thing, right? You're just
Yeah.
not going to be able to tell in most cases. One of the hazards of using AI in your creative writing is that sort of hallucination, right? And that you have no control over. Now, I know that you can go back in and you can read what the AI wrote and you can edit it and things like that, but you better catch it all, right? Because you could have written something, and if you don't catch it, and it might just be a very small thing, your fight scene makes no sense, right? Like, where did the nunchucks come from? He had no nunchucks, and all of a sudden he's got nunchucks. It's yet another hazard of injecting your shitty AI into our creative process.
Yes.
And I'm having none of it, I tell you.
And oftentimes, it's the worst possible people out there who are telling us that we're wrong about AI. And I just think, you're not a good person. Why should
Yeah.
I trust you in the first place?
Yeah.
Why do you want me to hand over this creative spark within myself to you? Why do you think that your machine that is trained on millions of people is somehow better than me? We are humans. We are messy, terrible creatures. And that's where so much of our best creation comes from, is from being human. And removing the human element is sanding off all of the rough edges that makes things interesting.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you very much for listening to another episode of Bad Lit Friends and our hot and cool and gelid takes on approaching book 2 and book 3, maybe. For episode 3, we are going to be talking about Reddit, specifically the subreddit Pub Tips, which is full of a lot of very good advice about the querying process, trad pub. It's also full of people who don't want to take good advice, people who want to give out some very bad advice, and people who are convinced that they know everything about everything and are very happy to tell you about it.
And you know what? We're going to name names. No, we're not.
We're
We're
not
not
going
going
to
to do
name,
that.
no. Well, we're naming a subreddit. And we might also talk about our romantasy circle jerk, which is my new obsession, even though I don't read romantasy.
I'm going to write one. I'm
Yeah,
going to write one.
he will. Friends, he will. So find us on Blue Sky, on Threads, on Instagram. We are Badlit Friends everywhere. Please like this podcast, subscribe, review if you can figure out how to review. I have not been able to tell people how to review this podcast. That's okay. That's only one person I know of who asked me how to do this.
Just tell your friends. Yeah.
Tell your friends. Please do. And Mom, if I finally allowed you to listen, I love you.
Oh.
So thank you again for listening to Bad Lit Friends, and we will see you next time.